When? The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel H. Pink. Picture this. It's just past 1 in the afternoon on a peaceful spring day, May 7, 1915. The Lusitania, a breathtaking luxury liner, glides effortlessly through calm waters off the Irish coast, hours away from completing its transatlantic voyage. At the helm stands Captain William Thomas Turner, a legend among seamen, decorated with awards and built, as someone once said, like a bank vault. But something's off. The day before, Captain Turner got word that German U-boats were lurking in these exact waters. He knows the drill perfectly. Crank up the speed and zigzag unpredictably to throw off any submarine. He'd even reassured his passengers that at full throttle, the Lusitania could leave any submarine in its wake. Yet in that crucial hour after 1 o'clock, Captain Turner does something baffling. Not once, but twice. First, he keeps the ship cruising at 18 knots when she can hit 21. Second, to check their position, he chooses a tediously slow 40-minute maneuver that locks them into sailing a perfectly straight line, essentially painting a target on their hull. At 2:10 in the afternoon, a German torpedo rips through the ship's side. 18 minutes later, the magnificent Lusitania capsizes and plunges into the depths, claiming nearly 1,200 lives. For over 100 years, historians have wrestled with this moment. Was it conspiracy? Was Captain Turner a puppet in some shadowy military scheme? Was he simply incompetent? The truth has remained as murky as the ocean floor. But what if the answer isn't locked away in classified documents? What if the clue isn't about what Captain Turner decided, but when he made those decisions? What if one of history's most devastating maritime disasters happened for a ridiculously simple reason we ignore every single day? Maybe he just made terrible decisions because he made them in the afternoon. Today we're exploring a book that's captivated over 2 million readers worldwide and revolutionized how we think about our daily routines. It's called When? The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel H. Pink. Pink has this rare gift for taking mountains of complex research from psychology, biology, and economics and turning it into something crystal clear and incredibly useful. We've all heard timing is everything, right? But what does that actually mean? Every day we're bombarded with timing decisions. When to launch that project, when to negotiate a raise, when to have that tough conversation, when to commit to a relationship. Most of us are basically throwing darts blindfolded, relying on hunches and crossed fingers. Daniel Pink argues that timing isn't some mystical art form, it's science. He reveals there's a hidden pattern humming beneath the surface of our days, a code that controls our moods, our performance, and how well we make decisions. Here's my promise. By the time we're done, you'll crack this hidden code. You'll understand why you're sharp and focused at certain times, and feel like you're wading through mental fog at others. You'll discover the secret power lurking in beginnings, midpoints, and endings. And you'll learn how to harness this science of timing to design a better schedule, make sharper choices, and live a richer, more productive life. This isn't just about managing your time. It's about mastering it. Think about your typical day for a moment. When do you feel razor sharp? When does that afternoon slump hit you like a freight train? And when do you catch that mysterious second wind in the evening? You might think these feelings are totally random, but they're not. They're part of a predictable universal pattern that governs every single one of us. Daniel Pink blows our minds with a fascinating study from Cornell University. Researchers analyzed over 500 million tweets from 2.4 million people across 84 countries. They used software to measure the emotional content of these messages, tracking whether people felt positive emotions like hope and enthusiasm, or negative ones like anger and guilt. What they discovered was absolutely jaw-dropping in its consistency. Across cultures, time zones, and continents, our mood follows the exact same daily rhythm: a peak, a trough, and a rebound. Positive feelings climb in the morning, hitting their high point around noon. Then they nosedive in the early afternoon, bottoming out in what's called the trough. Finally, they start climbing again in the late afternoon and early evening, in what's known as the recovery or rebound. Peak, trough, rebound. This pattern is as reliable as the tide rolling in and out. And here's the kicker. It doesn't just mess with our mood, it dramatically affects how well we perform. This daily rhythm isn't just psychological, it's hardwired into our biology. The story starts with an 18th-century French astronomer named Jean-Jacques Dortu de Mairon, who noticed something weird about the plant sitting on his windowsill. Its leaves would open when morning light arrived and close up at night. Curious, he sealed the plant in a completely dark cabinet, cutting it off from all sunlight. Shockingly, the plant kept doing its thing, leaves opening in the morning, closing at night, all in total darkness. The plant wasn't just reacting to sunlight, it was following its own internal timekeeper. That discovery launched the science of chronobiology, the study of our internal clocks. Your biological clock is actually a tiny cluster of about 20,000 cells in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or just SCN. It's the size of a grain of rice, but it's the master conductor of your daily life, orchestrating your body temperature, your hormones, and when you feel sleepy or wired. This biological clock means our cognitive abilities aren't static throughout the day. We're literally smarter, faster, and more creative at certain times than others. And Pink drops this bombshell. The performance gap between our daily high point and our daily low point can be as dramatic as the effect of drinking enough alcohol to reach the legal limit. Let that sink in. You'd never walk into a final exam or job interview after a couple of drinks, but many of us unknowingly tackle our most important work when our brains are in a similarly impaired state. So how do we use this pattern to our advantage? Pink lays out a powerful framework he calls the synchrony effect. Understanding your chronotype, understanding the task, and matching them to the right time. First up, your chronotype. This is your personal pattern of circadian rhythms. You've probably heard of larks, early birds, and owls, night owls. Pink explains that while about 14% of us are true larks and 21% are true owls, the vast majority, around 65% of us, are what he calls third birds, falling somewhere in the middle. Your chronotype is largely determined by genetics and age. Little kids are larks. Teenagers and young adults overwhelmingly become owls, which, as we'll discover, has massive implications for things like school start times. As we age, we tend to shift back toward being larks. Here's where it gets crucial. For larks and third birds, that's most of us, the daily pattern goes peak, trough, rebound. Our peak, when we're best at sharp analytical thinking, happens in the morning. The trough hits in the early afternoon, and the rebound, when energy returns, arrives in the late afternoon and evening. For owls, however, the pattern flips: rebound, trough, peak. They start the day in their recovery period, hit their trough around midday, and only reach their mental peak in the late afternoon and evening. Once you know your chronotype, you look at the task. Pink says tasks generally fall into two buckets: analytic tasks, which require focus, vigilance, and sharp thinking. Think writing a legal document, doing your taxes, or solving a complex math problem. Then there are insight tasks, which are more creative and require looser, more innovative thinking, like brainstorming, generating a new idea, or seeing a problem from a fresh angle. Now you match them to the time. For most of us, larks and third birds, the rule is simple: tackle your important analytic work during your morning peak. This is when your mental guards are standing at attention, blocking distractions, and allowing you to focus intensely. Save your insight and creative work for your evening rebound. Why? Because in the late afternoon, your mental guards are getting tired. You're less inhibited, which opens the door for those unexpected connections and aha moments to break through. Creativity often flourishes when our filters come down. And the afternoon trough? Pink warns this is the danger zone. Save your administrative, mindless tasks for this time. Answering routine emails, making copies, organizing your desk, or better yet, take a break. Whatever you do, don't let important decisions sneak into the afternoon. This brings us back to Captain Turner and the Lusitania. He made his two fatal decisions between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, smack in the middle of the afternoon trough. His mind wasn't as sharp, his judgment was compromised, and a series of small, poor decisions snowballed into a world-changing catastrophe. This afternoon danger zone is shockingly real, and Pink calls it the Bermuda Triangle of our days. He shares a mountain of disturbing evidence from the medical world, painting what he calls the hospital of doom. For example, a study at Duke Medical Center discovered that the risk of a serious anesthesia error was 4 times higher at 4 in the afternoon compared to 9 in the morning. Doctors are less likely to spot cancerous polyps during afternoon colonoscopies. They're more likely to prescribe unnecessary antibiotics, fueling the rise of antibiotic-resistant superbugs. And in a massive study covering nearly 36 hospitals, researchers found that healthcare workers were almost 40% less likely to wash their hands in the afternoon compared to the morning. The consequences are staggering: thousands of preventable infections and deaths, all linked to the simple fact that it was the afternoon. It's not just hospitals. This is when traffic accidents spike, when students bomb their tests, and even when judges hand down harsher sentences. It's a period of weakened vigilance and sloppy thinking. So how do we navigate this daily Bermuda Triangle? Pink offers powerful tools, and they all revolve around one simple, profound idea: the power of breaks. Breaks are not a sign of sloth, he writes, but a sign of strength. He introduces 2 types of breaks. First are vigilance breaks, like the mandatory timeouts surgeons take before an operation to review a checklist. These brief pauses help sharpen the mind and prevent catastrophic errors, especially during high-stakes work that must happen in the afternoon trough. But for most of us, the more relevant type is the restorative break. He points to a study of Danish schoolchildren who, like kids everywhere, performed worse on tests taken in the afternoon. But there was a fascinating twist. If students had a 20 to 30-minute break to eat, play, and chat before the test, their scores didn't just stop dropping, they actually improved. The break was more powerful than the afternoon trough. The science on breaks is crystal clear. They replenish our mental reserves and boost our performance. Pink outlines the ingredients of a perfect break. It should be moving instead of stationary, social instead of solo, and preferably outside in nature. And critically, it must be fully detached. No checking work email or mindlessly scrolling through your phone. A short walk outside with a friend, talking about anything except work, is the gold standard. He also argues that lunch is perhaps the most important meal of the day, far more than breakfast, not just for the food, but for the break itself. Taking a real lunch break, away from your desk, with control over what you do and who you're with, is one of your best defenses against the afternoon slump. And finally, Pink makes a compelling case for something many of us feel guilty about: napping. Done right, a short nap is like a Zamboni for your brain, smoothing out the rough patches of the day. The ideal nap, according to research, lasts just 10 to 20 minutes. Any longer, and you risk sleep inertia, that groggy, disoriented feeling. A short nap, however, boosts alertness and performance for hours. And he offers a brilliant life hack to supercharge it: the nappuccino. Drink a cup of coffee right before you lie down for your 20-minute nap. Caffeine takes about 25 minutes to kick in, so just as you're waking up, the coffee starts working its magic, giving you a double shot of clarity and energy. Understanding the daily pattern of peak, trough, and rebound is the first step to mastering timing. But Pink then zooms out, showing us that our lives and projects also follow a predictable arc, with distinct beginnings, midpoints, and endings. How we navigate these 3 phases is just as critical. Let's start with beginnings. Pink lays out 3 principles: start right, start again, and start together. To illustrate starting right, he tackles the heated debate over school start times. Remember how teenagers are biological owls? Their brains don't really wake up until mid-morning. Yet across the country, most high schools start before 8:30 in the morning, some as early as 7 o'clock. Pink calls this a gargantuan mismatch between biological time and school time. The science is overwhelming. These early start times are linked to lower grades, higher rates of depression, substance abuse, and even more car crashes among teen drivers. When schools have pushed their start times later, even by just an hour, attendance goes up, grades improve, and graduation rates increase. It's one of the most effective and lowest-cost ways to boost student outcomes. Getting the beginning of the day right sets the trajectory for everything that follows. But what if you get off to a bad start? That's where the second principle, start again, comes in. We all know the feeling of a New Year's resolution. On January 1st, we feel fired up to change. We have a clean slate. Pink explains that these dates are what social scientists call temporal landmarks. They're like signposts in time that help us navigate our lives. Researchers at Wharton discovered what they call the fresh start effect. They found that people are more likely to pursue their goals, like starting a diet or hitting the gym, not just on January 1st, but also at the start of a new month, a new week, or even the day after a holiday or their birthday. These dates allow us to open a new mental account, disconnecting us from our past failures and giving us a renewed sense of confidence. The beauty of this is that you don't have to wait for New Year's. You can create your own fresh start. Monday is the most powerful fresh start day of all, but you can use a personal anniversary, the first day of a new season, or any personally meaningful date to reboot your motivation and start again. Finally, there's start together. Some beginnings are beyond our control, and when we start at a disadvantage, the effects can echo for decades. To show this, Pink highlights shocking research by economist Lisa Kahn. She studied people who graduated from college during a recession versus those who graduated when the economy was booming. The unlucky graduates, through no fault of their own, earned less in their first job. No surprise there. The shock is that this wage gap stuck around for as long as 20 years. An unlucky start led to a lifetime of lower earnings, costing them, on average, over $100,000. This is a problem we can't solve individually. We have to solve it collectively. We have to start together. Pink points to examples like teaching hospitals, which used to have what was called the July effect, where patient errors spiked when new doctors started their residencies. They solved it by having new doctors start as part of an experienced team, not flying solo. We do better when we ensure that those starting at a disadvantage don't have to start alone. After beginnings, we inevitably hit the middle. And midpoints, Pink reveals, are strange creatures. They can either cause us to slump in motivation or ignite us into action. First, the slump. Think of the infamous midlife crisis. Pink explains that the dramatic, sports car buying, life-upending crisis is largely a myth. What's real, however, is a midlife slump. Researchers have found that happiness across the globe follows a consistent, U-shaped curve. We start our adult lives pretty happy, but our well-being slowly dips, bottoming out in our late 40s or early 50s, before rising again to new heights in our later years. This U-curve is so powerful it even shows up in great apes, like chimpanzees and orangutans. This slump doesn't just happen in life, it happens in projects too. In one clever study, researchers tracked Jewish families observing Hanukkah. They found that people were diligent about lighting the candles on the first and last nights, but in the middle nights of the holiday, their commitment sagged, forming that U-shaped pattern of motivation. In the middle, we tend to coast and cut corners. But midpoints can also trigger the opposite effect. They can be a wake-up call. This is the spark. Management researcher Connie Gersick studied teams working on projects with deadlines. She expected them to make steady, gradual progress. Instead, she found something totally different. Teams would drift along, not accomplishing much for the first half of the project. Then, precisely at the temporal midpoint, something would snap into place. Suddenly, a new sense of urgency would kick in. They'd abandon their old, ineffective approaches, adopt fresh strategies, and make dramatic progress. Gersick called this, quote, punctuated equilibrium. Pink calls it the uh-oh effect. The midpoint acts like a mental alarm clock. We realize we've burned through half our time, and that uh-oh feeling jolts us into high gear. It focuses our minds and energizes our efforts. So how do we turn a midpoint slump into a midpoint spark? Pink points to fascinating research on thousands of basketball games. Teams that are ahead at halftime are, obviously, more likely to win. But there's one bizarre exception. Teams that are trailing by just 1 point at halftime actually win more often than teams that are ahead by 1 point. Why? Because being slightly behind is a powerful motivator. It creates that perfect uh-oh moment without being demoralizing. When legendary coach Dean Smith's team was down by 1 at halftime in the 1982 championship game, a game they would go on to win with a last-second shot by a freshman named Michael Jordan, he told his team, "We are exactly where we want to be." The lesson for us is powerful. When you hit the midpoint of a project, make it visible. Set a reminder. And if you want to spark that surge of motivation, convince yourself you're just a little bit behind. This brings us to the final phase, endings. Endings, Pink shows us, are incredibly powerful. They shape our behavior in 4 key ways. They help us energize, encode, edit, and elevate. First, endings energize. They make us kick harder. Researchers Adam Alter and Hal Hirschfield discovered a curious phenomenon among people they call 9-enders, those who are 29, 39, 49, and so on. As people approach the end of a decade, they become more likely to search for meaning and significance. For some, this means running their first marathon. 9-enders are overrepresented among first-time marathon runners by nearly 50%. The most common age for running a first marathon? 29. For others, sadly, this search for meaning can lead to destructive behavior like having an affair. But in both cases, the approaching end of a decade acts as a powerful catalyst. This is the fast finish effect. As we near a finish line, we discover an extra burst of energy. Second, endings help us encode our memories. When we look back on an experience, we don't remember every moment equally. We disproportionately weight 2 things: the most intense moment, the peak, and the end. This is known as the peak-end rule. A vacation that has some great moments but ends badly will be remembered as a bad vacation. A difficult medical procedure that ends on a less painful note will be remembered more favorably than a shorter one that ends in agony. We have a powerful bias for endings, and it shapes how we remember and evaluate almost everything. Third, endings help us edit. As we get older and our time horizon shrinks, we become more selective about how we spend our time and who we spend it with. This is Stanford researcher Laura Carstenson's theory of socio-emotional selectivity. Contrary to the stereotype of lonely old age, older people don't have fewer friends because they're isolated. They have fewer friends by choice. They actively prune their social networks, cutting out superficial relationships to focus on the people who bring them the most emotional satisfaction and meaning. When the end is in sight, we edit out the non-essential. Finally, endings help us elevate. Human beings have a deep preference for endings that lift us up. This is why, when someone asks if you want the good news or the bad news first, most of us prefer to hear the bad news first. We want to end on a high note. But the most powerful elevation doesn't come from pure happiness. It comes from a more complex emotion, poignancy. Poignancy is that bittersweet blend of happiness and sadness. Think of graduation day, or the final episode of a beloved show. It's the feeling of saying goodbye to something meaningful. This mixture of emotions is what gives endings their deep sense of significance. The most satisfying endings aren't just happy, they're meaningful. So we've explored the hidden rhythm of our day and the powerful arc of our projects. but much of our lives unfold not alone, but with others. The final piece of the timing puzzle is about how we synchronize our actions in groups. And to explain this, Pink takes us on an incredible journey to Mumbai, India, to meet the Dabbawalas. The Dabbawalas are a network of 5,000 workers who deliver over 200,000 home-cooked lunches every single day across one of the most chaotic and densely packed cities on Earth. Here's the mind-blowing part. They do it with near-perfect accuracy, an error rate that rivals FedEx without using any technology. No smartphones, no GPS, no software. Most of the workers can't even read. How is this possible? Pink reveals they are masters of group synchronization, and their system is built on 3 principles. First, you must sync to the boss. Every group needs a pacesetter, an external standard that sets the rhythm. For a choir, it's the conductor. For a rowing team, it's the coxswain, shouting out the tempo from the back of the boat. For the Dabbawalas, the boss isn't a person, it's the train schedule. Everything they do is timed to catching a specific train. Missing it is not an option. This unchangeable external clock imposes order and discipline on their complex system. Second, you must sync to the tribe. For a group to coordinate effectively, its members need a powerful sense of belonging. The Dabbawalas are a tight-knit community. Most come from the same villages, speak the same dialect, and even wear the same uniform, a white Gandhi cap. They have their own secret code, a series of letters and numbers on each lunch container that tells them exactly where it came from and where it needs to go. This shared identity and language creates deep trust and what they call brotherly feeling, allowing them to work together seamlessly. Third, you must sync to the heart. The most effective groups are bound together by a shared emotion or purpose. Pink shows that when we synchronize with others, whether singing in a choir, rowing in a boat, or even just dancing, something amazing happens. Our heart rates align. Our bodies release endorphins. We feel good. This feeling creates a virtuous circle. Synchronizing makes us feel good, and feeling good makes us better at synchronizing. For the Dabbawalas, this heart connection comes from their sense of mission. They don't just see themselves as delivery workers. They see their work as a sacred duty. They're delivering more than food. They're delivering a connection between family members, a moment of care in the middle of a hectic day. This shared purpose is what fuels their incredible precision and dedication. It's what allows them to bring order to chaos, day after day. From the hidden patterns of our day, to the arcs of our lives, to the ways we connect with others, Daniel Pink shows us that timing is a force we can understand and harness. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter by working with the natural rhythms of the world and of ourselves. As we wrap up our journey through Win, I'm left with one powerful, overarching insight. So many of our struggles aren't because we're doing the wrong things. We're doing the right things at the wrong time. We blame ourselves for being unproductive in the afternoon, for losing steam in the middle of a project, or for failing to get a team to click, without ever realizing we're fighting against powerful, invisible currents of time. What Daniel Pink does so brilliantly is make those currents visible. He hands us a map and a compass. He shows us that the afternoon trough isn't a character flaw, it's a biological reality. That the midpoint slump isn't weakness. It's a predictable phase that can be transformed into momentum. That effective teamwork isn't just about strategy, it's about synchrony. This book fundamentally shifts our focus from what we do to when we do it, and in that shift lies profound liberation and empowerment. It's liberating because you can stop beating yourself up for not being a productivity machine around the clock. It's empowering because it gives you a clear, science-backed playbook for making better choices. If I could give you just a few simple actions to take from this book, they would be these. First, discover your chronotype. Take a few days to notice when you naturally wake up and fall asleep without an alarm. Are you a lark, an owl, or a third bird? Knowing this is the first step to designing a day that works with your body, not against it. Second, honor the peak, trough, and rebound. Protect your morning peak for your most important analytical work. Schedule your creative brainstorming for the late afternoon rebound. And most importantly, respect the trough. Use it for administrative tasks, but better yet, use it to take a real restorative break. Go for that walk. Try that nappuccino. And third, become an architect of your time. Be intentional about beginnings, midpoints, and endings. Use temporal landmarks to create fresh starts. Make your midpoints visible to trigger that uh-oh effect. And design endings that elevate and provide a sense of meaning, both for yourself and for others. That was a summary of When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel H. Pink. We've explored the core ideas today, but a summary is like looking at travel photos. It shows you the beautiful destinations, but it can't give you the feeling of actually being there. The true gift of this book is in the rich stories, the fascinating studies, and the way Pink weaves seemingly unrelated ideas into a coherent whole. This summary is a roadmap to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If you felt that nagging sense that you could be more effective, more creative, or just feel better throughout your day, then I urge you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's an experience that will fundamentally change how you see every hour of every day. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us reach more curious minds like yours and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.